Oh,
Sir, I need you to step back and show me some identification.
before I do that, tell me what law you think I'm breaking.
You fit a description.
A description or an assumption?
Both. Now turn around and hands behind your back.
Special Agent Malcolm Reyes, FBI, and you just made a very serious mistake.
Officer Nathan Rivers had served with the Atlanta Police Department for 6 years. 6 years that came with 11 complaints, each one dismissed or closed with little consequence. Fellow officers described his style as assertive neighborhood policing, a softer phrase for stopping people based on instincts, assumptions, and mental profiles he created himself. During his probation, training supervisors documented concerns about unconscious bias. Those warnings were filed away and never followed up. One Friday evening in Atlanta's Buckhead area, Rivers's long pattern of profiling crossed paths with a federal agent who understood the law far better than he did. That encounter would end up costing the city $4, $7 million, and reveal a deep institutional failure that had gone unchecked for years. Special Agent Malcolm Reyes had worked organized crime cases for the FBI for 14 years. 14 years filled with wiretaps, long-term surveillance, and undercover assignments that dismantled trafficking rings and sent violent offenders to prison. He had testified in federal court 37 times. He regularly coordinated with international law enforcement partners. His professional record was flawless, his credentials unquestionable. That Friday evening, he was simply heading to dinner with a colleague, walking along a crowded street in daylight, dressed in business casual clothes, carrying only his phone and wallet. No crime, no suspicious conduct, no lawful reason for police contact. Yet Officer Rivers saw him and instantly decided something was off. That split-second judgment would derail careers, spark public outrage, and raise hard questions about who police view as threats and why. Before we go further, tell us where you're watching from. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be told, and your support helps bring hidden truths into the open. Buckhead is among Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhoods. Designer stores, fine dining, luxury apartments, and corporate headquarters line its streets. The area is well kept, sidewalks filled with professionals, visitors, and locals. Police are usually low-key here, interactions polite, with an unspoken assumption that people belong, unless they're black. It was 6:47 p.m. on an early October Friday. The sun dipped low, stretching shadows across Peachtree Road. The temperature sat in the mid-70s, skies clear, a gentle breeze drifting through. People walked dogs. Couples headed toward dinner plans. Office workers made their way home after long weeks. Malcolm Reyes had spent his day at the FBI's Atlanta field office reviewing video tied to an ongoing racketeering case. It was exhausting work, hours of blurry footage, tracking movements, building timelines piece by piece. He was drained and looking forward to a relaxed meal and conversation. He planned to meet fellow agent Jennifer Owens at a steakhouse 6 blocks away. Instead of driving, he chose to walk, loosen up, reset his mind, and enjoy the evening. Reyes was 41, athletic, neatly groomed. He wore khaki pants, a navy button-down with rolled sleeves, and brown leather shoes. His FBI badge stayed in his front pocket, as always. His service weapon rested at his side, concealed beneath his shirt. He looked exactly like what he was, a federal agent off duty, yet always alert. He walked with confidence, not haste, checking his phone now and then, offering brief nods to passers-by. He belonged there. He had every legal right to be there. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But to Officer Nathan Rivers, something about Malcolm Reyes sparked suspicion. That suspicion, rooted in bias rather than facts, was about to erupt into a confrontation that would dominate national headlines. Nathan Rivers was 29 years old. He joined the Atlanta Police Department 6 years earlier, straight out of the academy, full of ideas about fighting crime and serving the public. Over time, those ideas twisted into something more troubling, a belief that certain people didn't belong in certain spaces. Rivers received his first complaint just 5 months after patrolling alone. He stopped a black woman driving a Mercedes, convinced it was stolen. It wasn't. She was a heart specialist heading home from the hospital. The complaint cited racial profiling. Internal Affairs investigated, found no conclusive proof, and closed the case with a suggestion for bias training. Rivers attended a half-day session and returned to duty. 7 months later came another complaint. A black businessman in a suit walking through a parking structure. Rivers stopped him, demanded identification, questioned his presence. The man owned the building. Another complaint. Another review. Another recommendation for training. Over the next 5 years, 9 more complaints followed. Each one echoed the same theme. Rivers stopping black professionals in upscale areas, challenging their right to be there, refusing to accept their explanations. Every case was reviewed. Every review concluded there wasn't enough evidence of intentional discrimination. Each time Rivers stayed on patrol, supervisors were aware of the pattern. His file was packed with reports and complaints, yet no one confronted the obvious question. When does repetition become evidence? Rivers learned how to justify his stops with care, vague descriptions, suspicious behavior, and anonymous concerns. He knew the wording that would pass reports and shield him from discipline. By the time he met Malcolm Reyes, Rivers had completed 11 trainings on bias awareness, cultural sensitivity, and constitutional law, and none of it had changed him. Do you believe officers with 10 or more complaints should be pulled from patrol automatically? Share your thoughts below. That evening, Rivers cruised slowly through Buckhead, scanning pedestrians and cars. He called it proactive policing, watching for anything that seemed out of place. He spotted Malcolm Reyes from a block away. A black man alone, well-dressed, walking confidently through a wealthy, mostly white area. In Rivers's mind, shaped by years of unchallenged bias, it didn't add up. The clothes looked too nice. The confidence felt suspicious. The presence seemed unjustified. Rivers parked and observed. Reyes passed luxury storefronts, glanced at his phone, and kept walking. Normal actions of someone heading somewhere they belonged, but Rivers had already decided. This man didn't fit. This man needed questioning. Rivers exited his vehicle and followed at a distance. Reyes stopped at a crosswalk, waited for the signal, crossed. Rivers crossed behind him, closing in. At the next block, Rivers called out, "Sir, excuse me." Reyes stopped and turned. He recognized the uniform, the badge, the posture. Years in federal service told him this could turn problematic. "Yes, officer," Reyes replied calmly. Rivers approached, hand hovering near his belt. "I need you to step back and show identification." Reyes stayed still. "Before I do that, tell me what law you believe I'm violating." Rivers clenched his jaw. "You match a description." Reyes tilted his head slightly. "A description or an assumption?" "Both." Rivers stepped closer, voice firm. "Turn around, hands behind your back." This was the turning point where bias met legal knowledge. Where authority ran into rights, Reyes didn't move. His tone stayed steady but firm. "Special Agent Malcolm Reyes, FBI, and you've just made a serious error." Rivers froze, face reddening. Instead of stepping back or calming the situation, his ego took over. "I don't care if you're FBI, CIA, or the president. You fit a description and I'm detaining you." "What description?" Reyes asked evenly. "Be precise." "What crime? When was it reported? Where? What suspect details do I match?" Rivers stumbled. "There was a call about suspicious activity." "When?" "Earlier." "What time? What location? What clothing? Height? Weight?" Rivers had nothing because there was no call. No description, just bias dressed up as authority. Reyes saw it in his face, the realization, the panic of going too far but feeling trapped. "Officer," Reyes said coldly, "you have 2 options. Admit you lack reasonable suspicion and end this now. Or continue, and I guarantee your career is finished." Should officers be required to cite verifiable facts before detaining someone? Let us know below. Rivers reached for his cuffs. "Turn around." Reyes didn't budge. "I will not comply with an unlawful order. You have no legal grounds. You're resisting." "No, I'm exercising my Fourth Amendment rights." A small crowd formed. A woman raised her phone and recorded. Others slowed to watch. A nearby building's security guard approached, uneasy. Rivers felt the stares, felt his authority slipping in public. Instead of stopping, he pushed harder. "Last warning," Rivers said. "Hands behind your back or you're under arrest for obstruction." Reyes slowly reached into his pocket and removed his FBI credentials, moving with care so every action was clear. He raised them into view. The gold badge reflected the streetlight. The ID card was unmistakable. Special Agent Malcolm Reyes, FBI, badge number 7854, Atlanta Field Office. You can confirm it with a single phone call. His voice stayed calm, but the anger beneath it was unmistakable. "You stopped me without cause. You demanded identification with no reasonable suspicion. You threatened arrest when I asserted my rights, and now you're trying to arrest a federal agent because your pride won't let you admit you were wrong." Rivers stared at the credentials. They looked authentic, but he convinced himself they weren't, that it had to be a trick, that fake badges were common. "Those could be counterfeit," Rivers said. Reyes's expression stayed neutral, but his eyes hardened. They're not, and you know it. But you're too deep into this stop, too committed to the story you created to walk away. Turn around. No, Rivers grabbed Reyes' arm. Reyes pulled back on instinct, not aggressively, not violently, just firmly. Don't touch me. You have no legal authority to detain me. Rivers yanked harder, trying to twist him around. Reyes kept his footing, his training obvious. He didn't strike back, he didn't escalate, but he didn't submit. You're under arrest for resisting an officer. Rivers shouted loud enough for the growing crowd. The woman recording spoke up. He's FBI. He showed you his badge. What are you doing? Rivers ignored her and tried to force Reyes' arms behind his back. Reyes resisted, using balance and positioning to stop it. For 30 seconds they struggled, Rivers trying to dominate. Reyes refusing unlawful control. Then a voice cut through it all. Rivers, stand down. Sergeant Patricia Wolf had been driving by when she noticed the scene. A 23-year veteran, she knew trouble instantly. She parked quickly and approached, one hand raised to calm things down. Step back, Rivers, now. Rivers let go of Reyes' arm but stayed close. Sarge, this person was acting suspicious and refused to comply. I said, step back. Wolf's voice carried 20 years of command. Rivers stepped away, breathing hard, face flushed. Wolf turned to Reyes. Sir, I'm Sergeant Wolf. Tell me what happened. Reyes adjusted his shirt, controlled but clearly angry. Your officer stopped me without cause, demanded ID without reasonable suspicion, and tried to arrest me when I questioned him. I identified myself as FBI and showed my credentials. He raised them again. He called them fake and tried to detain me anyway. Wolf examined the credentials carefully. Her expression shifted instantly. Recognition, concern, then anger. These are legitimate, she said quietly, turning to Rivers. You tried to arrest a federal agent? I didn't know, you didn't verify, that's the difference. She faced Reyes again. Agent Reyes, I'm sorry, this stop was improper. Reyes nodded but didn't respond. His eyes stayed on Rivers, who stood off to the side, still struggling to grasp how badly he'd misjudged the situation. Why do some officers double down instead of admitting they're wrong? Share your thoughts. The woman who had been filming approached Sergeant Wolf. I recorded everything from the start. Can I see it? She played the video. It showed it all. Rivers stopping Reyes without cause. Reyes asking for legal justification. Rivers ordering him to turn around. Reyes displaying his credentials. Rivers calling them fake. The physical confrontation. Wolf's face darkened as she watched. Ma'am, would you be willing to send that to the department? I'm sending it everywhere, the woman replied. This is wrong. That man didn't do anything. Another witness stepped forward, the nearby building's security guard. I saw it too. That officer stopped him for no reason. He was just walking. Wolf looked at Rivers. Her voice was calm, controlled, but the anger beneath it was clear. Get back to your vehicle. Don't speak. Don't move. Wait for a supervisor. Rivers walked toward his patrol car, moving like someone in a daze. Wolf turned back to Reyes. Agent Reyes, I know this was unacceptable. You have every right to file a complaint, and I'll personally make sure you receive all body cam footage and reports. Reyes nodded. I'll be filing more than a complaint, Sergeant. I'm filing a federal civil rights lawsuit. This wasn't an error. This was profiling, and I doubt it's the first time. Wolf didn't argue. I understand, and you're probably correct. A supervisor arrived 10 minutes later. Lieutenant David Morrison, a 16-year veteran known for integrity. Wolf briefed him, showed the witness video, and explained what she saw. Morrison listened, expression grim. He walked to Rivers' patrol car. Officer Rivers, you're suspended effective immediately. Internal Affairs will contact you within 24 hours. Do not discuss this incident or post about it online. Go home. Rivers nodded silently. Morrison then approached Reyes. Agent Reyes, I'm Lieutenant Morrison. I've seen the video and heard the statements. What happened here is completely unacceptable. We will fully cooperate and this officer will face consequences. Reyes' voice stayed steady, though the anger remained. Lieutenant, I've worked with police departments nationwide. I've run joint operations. I've testified beside local officers. I have never been stopped, questioned, and physically grabbed by an officer who refused to accept my credentials. This wasn't confusion. This was bias. Morrison didn't dispute it. You're right, and I'm sorry. By that night, the witness video was online. Within hours, it went viral. FBI agent profiled and nearly arrested in Atlanta while walking to dinner. Federal agent grabbed by officer who refused to accept his badge. $4. $7 million lawsuit filed after stop without cause. The story exploded. Local outlets, national headlines, civil rights groups, FBI statements. The video showed everything. The video showed unmistakable profiling, an officer refusing to verify clearly valid credentials, and a federal agent remaining composed while his rights were violated. Should body cameras automatically upload footage to independent servers in real time? Share your answer. Within 12 hours, the FBI's Atlanta field office released a statement. We are aware of an incident involving one of our agents and the Atlanta Police Department. The matter is under review, and we are cooperating fully with all appropriate investigations. The safety and rights of our personnel remain a top priority. Privately, the reaction was far less restrained. FBI leadership was furious. The Atlanta Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit opened an immediate investigation. The Department of Justice launched a civil rights inquiry. What they uncovered was devastating. Officer Nathan Rivers had 11 complaints across 6 years. 11. Everyone involved stopping black individuals in wealthy neighborhoods. Everyone alleged racial profiling. Everyone was closed without meaningful discipline. The pattern was undeniable. Year 1 brought 2 complaints, both claiming stops without reasonable suspicion. Outcome: training suggested no discipline. Year 2 saw 1 complaint alleging unlawful detention. Outcome: insufficient evidence, case closed. Year 3 included 3 complaints, all alleging racial profiling in Buckhead. Outcome: additional bias training required, no suspension. Year 4 involved 2 complaints, one including physical contact during a stop. Outcome: supervisory counseling, return to duty. Year 5 brought 1 complaint alleging false arrest. Outcome: case settled by the city before a full investigation. Year 6 included 2 complaints, including the Malcolm Ray's incident. The internal review revealed something worse. Supervisors had recognized the pattern 3 years earlier. A memo from a lieutenant to a captain specifically warned about Rivers's tendency to stop black individuals in predominantly white neighborhoods without clear justification. The recommendation was reassignment to administrative duties pending extensive retraining. The outcome: memo filed, no action taken. The Atlanta Police Department knew Nathan Rivers was a liability. They documented it. They discussed it internally. They did nothing. Civil rights attorneys contacted Agent Reyes within days. The case was clear-cut: unlawful stop. Attempted unlawful detention. Civil rights violations. A documented history of similar behavior. The lawsuit named Officer Nathan Rivers, his direct supervisor Sergeant William Kramer, Lieutenant Edward Monroe, who authored the ignored memo, and the Atlanta Police Department. The claims were extensive. Unlawful stop without reasonable suspicion violating the Fourth Amendment. Racial profiling and discrimination violating federal civil rights laws. Attempted false arrest and false imprisonment. Use of force without legal justification. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Failure to train, supervise, and discipline officers with documented constitutional violations. Deliberate indifference by department leadership to citizens' rights. City attorneys reviewed the evidence. The witness video capturing the entire encounter. Rivers's complaint history, the internal memo proving supervisory awareness. Body camera footage confirming Reyes' account. Their conclusion was unavoidable. The case was indefensible. Settlement talks began within 3 months. The city offered $2 million. Reyes' legal team countered with $16 million, citing the severity of the conduct, the documented abuse pattern, and the department's knowing inaction. They settled at $4. $7 million, one of the largest civil rights settlements in Atlanta history, for a stop that caused no arrest or injury. The agreement included more than money. Mandatory reforms to the complaint review process. Creation of an early warning system to flag officers with repeated complaints. Quarterly audits of all stops analyzed for racial disparities. A community oversight board with subpoena authority. Public reporting of complaint data and outcomes. Officer Nathan Rivers was fired 9 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct and severe. Officer Rivers engaged in conduct that violated constitutional rights, departmental policy, and public trust. Despite repeated complaints and multiple training efforts over 6 years, he continued a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. His actions endangered public safety, harmed community relations, and exposed the department to major legal risk. His employment is terminated for cause, effective immediately. Rivers's certification was revoked. His name was added to the National Decertification Index. He would never work in law enforcement again. He appealed, claiming the punishment was excessive and that he had followed his training. The appeal was denied. The evidence was overwhelming. Rivers released a statement through his attorney. "I made serious judgment mistakes that I deeply regret. I accept responsibility and apologize to Agent Reyes and the community." The apology rang empty. 11 complaints, 6 years, hundreds of stops. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. Should officers with 5 or more civil rights complaints automatically lose their badge? Share your thoughts below. The Department of Justice investigation expanded beyond Rivers. It examined the Atlanta Police Department's entire complaint system. What it found was failure at every level. Key findings followed. First, complaint review failures. Complaints were handled individually, never analyzed together to identify patterns. An officer could have 10 similar complaints, and each would be treated as unrelated. Second, ineffective training. Officers attended bias training, but no one measured whether behavior actually changed. Forms were signed. Patrol resumed. Third, supervisory neglect. Supervisors knew about problem officers but faced pressure to keep staffing numbers up. Keeping bad officers was easier than replacing them. Fourth, lack of accountability. Department culture favored protecting officers over protecting constitutional rights. Complaints were seen as attacks, not warnings. Fifth, no early intervention. Despite having data, there was no system to stop officers like Rivers before serious harm occurred. The DOJ issued a harsh report with mandatory reforms. An early intervention system required within 6 months. Independent review of all racial bias complaints. Quarterly public reporting of racial disparities in stops, searches, and force. Mandatory de-escalation training with yearly recertification. A community advisory board with authority to recommend discipline. Federal monitoring for 5 years. These reforms were court-ordered, not optional. Atlanta's mayor issued a public apology. What happened to Agent Reyes should never have occurred. It reflects failures in supervision, training, and accountability. We are committed to reform and rebuilding trust. Special Agent Malcolm Reyes later testified before the city council. His words were calm but powerful. "I'm a federal agent. I have knowledge, resources, and institutional support. And even with all of that, I was profiled, stopped illegally, and physically grabbed by an officer who refused to believe I had the right to walk on a public street." Now imagine what happens to people who don't have those protections. People who don't know their rights, can't afford lawyers, and don't have a badge or a federal agency standing behind them. Officer Rivers stopped me because he could not accept that a black man belonged in Buckhead. That is the truth. And until departments face that reality, admit it openly, and actively work to change it, this will continue. The question is not whether Officer Rivers was biased. The proof is undeniable. The real question is why the department allowed this behavior to continue for 6 years. Why 11 complaints failed to trigger intervention. Why a lieutenant's memo calling for reassignment was ignored. Those are the systemic breakdowns that made what happened to me possible, and those are the failures that must be fixed. The council chamber fell silent when he finished speaking. This was not simply about Nathan Rivers making a poor decision. It was about a system that allowed, shielded, and reinforced biased policing. Rivers did not develop this pattern in isolation. He quickly learned that stopping black people in white neighborhoods carried no consequences. That complaints led nowhere. That supervisors would back him. That the system would protect him. Every dismissed complaint taught him he was safe from accountability. Every training session without follow-up reinforced that belief. Every year he stayed on patrol despite mounting evidence, sent the message that his conduct was acceptable. The Atlanta Police Department created Nathan Rivers. Not deliberately, perhaps, but through neglect, indifference, and a culture that prioritized protecting officers over defending citizens' rights. And Malcolm Reyes paid the price. Not with his life or physical harm, but with his dignity. With his sense of safety in his own city. With the realization that even his credentials, his service, and his federal badge were not enough to stop him from being viewed as a threat. This is what systemic racism looks like when it wears a badge. It is not always hoods and burning crosses. Sometimes it is an officer who simply feels someone does not belong. Sometimes it is a supervisor who files a memo and takes no action. Sometimes it is a department that treats clear patterns as isolated incidents and complaints as inconveniences. When that system is backed by law, authority, qualified immunity, unions, and political protection, it does more than harm individuals. It poisons the relationship between police and the communities they serve. Nathan Rivers' career is over. That is justice. The city paid $4, $7 million. That is accountability. The department implemented reforms. That is progress. But none of that erases what happened to Malcolm Reyes. None of it removes the humiliation of being grabbed on a public street. None of it restores the assumption that he belongs in his own city. The real question is whether these reforms will last, whether early intervention will actually intervene, whether supervisors will act before the 11th complaint, whether training will change behavior instead of checking boxes. Because if departments do not fundamentally change how they deal with officers like Nathan Rivers, if patterns can still be ignored, then we are only waiting for the next stop, the next victim, the next lawsuit. Comment below if you believe departments should face federal oversight after any civil rights settlement over $1 million. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think accountability requires visibility, and if you want real change in how police interact with communities, hit the subscribe button. We will keep telling these stories. We will keep exposing patterns. We will keep demanding a system that works for everyone, not just a few. This is not only about one officer or one federal agent. It is about the future we are building, the accountability we demand, and the rights we refuse to give up.